This documentary was extremely interesting. I knew next to nothing about the YMCA before I watched it. My main information about it actually came from a Zoom meeting that I had last month with a staff member at the Y who worked in like office administration. And that was a cool meeting, but it was mostly focused on like the administrative part of the Y. Like she talked a little bit about their outreach, but not very much. I did know that the Y has support groups and leadership training for its staff and like the opportunity for them to move into like outreach positions, but it was still so focused on like the administrative side of their work that I didn't really know a lot more about like their mission. Beyond like that conversation about the administrative aspects, I knew about like the on-site services that the Y provides, the summer camps for kids that they hold, but yeah, very little about like the mission and the history. So the new insight that I gained about the Y was how religious its conception was, and then how that explicitly religious mission lasted for so long. I think the video said it was around like World War I, World War II, where the Y really made like a secular switch, and so it was religious for a really long amount of time while it was operating. I wish that everybody knew that the Y might have begun as like that religious institution, but that it's a secular institution now, and it's not affiliated with, like, while its mission is still like very biblical, kind of going back to like those core principles of nonprofit missions that we talked about in the first lecture. Like those are those are drawn from a biblical source, and so their mission is still very biblical in that way, but it's not affiliated directly with like a church or a religion or like a certain way of life anymore. And I think that that's important for people to know, because the perception that I have is that when people see something as like extremely religiously oriented, they may be less likely to think like, oh, this is a resource that's acceptable for me, this is something that I can take advantage of, especially if the way that services and resources are provided by that institution is very explicitly religious, like even with some of the Y's earlier work during like the Civil War and before, how they were handing out Bibles, holding prayer meetings. And like, while that is very important for people who have like a more religious bent to their lives, it's something that can make the services feel very exclusionary, and like, oh, if this is a very religious institution, or it's really pushing a certain worldview on me, I might be less likely to go back to that institution or take advantage of those resources. So I think that's important for people to know, that the Y isn't secular anymore. I'm inspired by this documentary to look a little bit more deeply into the origins of institutions and nonprofits that I'm interested in and that are in my community. I think that knowing the history and then how far the organization may have strayed from its original mission, and not necessarily in a bad way, they might have had to just adapt what they're trying to do to like fit the community differently. But I think that's important for like just analyzing a nonprofit as a whole, and then how you engage with the organization. Going back to George Wallace, I hope that he would be proud of where the Y currently stands. It might not have been as outright religious as he had hoped, but the impact of his work and what it does for young people, families, the community, you can see that throughout history, as the documentary showed. The way that it provides a space for people to come together, I think, is really important, and I hope he would be proud of that. So my current opinion of the Y as it currently operates is that I initially did see it as just like that gym and recreation center, and I saw those services that it provides, and that is still my biggest like picture of the Y as a whole. But I can now see how it provides those recreational opportunities, and how providing those to a community is in itself an important mission, but it also furthers that goal of providing the resources, connection, and trust in a community. So the Y is more than a gym, but having a gym and recreational facilities is still a really important mission for a nonprofit.